Hey guys, tonight we're not slipping into a cozy history lecture or a glossy Hollywood epic. We're slogging straight into the muck of a medieval battlefield, where the air's thick with sweat, panic, and the kind of mud that clings like a bad breakup. Picture yourself waking up on cold, damp earth, your chainmail digging into your ribs, the distant clang of steel already rattling your skull. This isn't knights in shining armor or choreographed duels. It's raw, chaotic, and, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this in one piece. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake to a sound that's half horn, half a guy screaming, "March," like it's personal. No snooze button, no coffee run, just the damp chill of the ground seeping through your cloak. Your armor's less a suit of valor and more a rusty, clingy X that won't let go. You try to stretch, but your chainmail pinches like it's got a grudge, and your back's already whining from a night spent on what feels like a pile of wet rocks. Around you, the camp's a mess of groggy soldiers, each sporting the same look of regret and soggy boots. One guy's still snoring, his head nestled in a helmet that's now a rainwater bucket. Another's jabbing a dagger at a slug that's taken up residence in his boot, muttering curses that'd make a sailor blush. You're not sure if you should eat or just apologize to your stomach in advance. Breakfast is a crust of bread so hard it could double as a shield, probably baked last Lent and forgotten. You chew slowly, not savoring the flavor. There isn't any, but because your jaw's still sore from yesterday's meal, which included some meat that might have been a rat in a past life, you wash it down with warm ale, because medieval water's like playing roulette with dysentery. No toothbrush, no mirror. You haven't seen your own face in weeks, and honestly, that's a blessing. You splash some swampy water on your cheeks, pretending it's hygiene, and strap on gear that smells like it's been marinating in fear and old socks. The camp's alive with the kind of chaos that makes a bar fight look organized. Men grumble, armor clanks, and someone's already limping after stepping barefoot on a pointy rock. Orders come from a guy on a horse who's clearly never walked a mile in his life, yelling, "Form up, move out," like he's auditioning for a play nobody wants to see. You shuffle into line, your boots sinking into mud that's less earth and more liquid despair. It's the kind of mud that doesn't just dirty your boots, it wants your soul, or at least your left foot. You pause to adjust a strap, and the guy behind you glares like he's ready to eat you if you slow him down again. No camaraderie here, just a shared misery that binds you like a bad contract. Your armor, by the way, wasn't built for comfort. It's heavy, it chafes, and it rubs in places you didn't know could hurt. Every step feels like you're a walking iron sausage, slow roasted in your own sweat. The air's a cocktail of livestock, cheap onions, and something that smells suspiciously like last night's turnip stew gone rogue. Someone ahead lets out a fart so potent it could be weaponized, and you try breathing through your mouth. Big mistake. You pass a dead hedgehog, a broken cart, and what might be a human toe. Nobody stops. Stopping's for suckers who like being screamed at by the sergeant, whose entire personality is just yelling. It's like he's got a quota to hit before noon. Mainstream fact, medieval armies often relied on levied peasants, not professional soldiers, which made battles like this one, think Agincourt in 1415, disorganized and brutal, with high casualties from disease and poor logistics as much as from combat. Quirky tidbit, some soldiers believed sleeping with a sprig of garlic under their pillow would ward off evil spirits, though it mostly just warded off anyone trying to bunk nearby. Historians still argue whether the chaos of these battles was due to poor training or just the sheer impossibility of coordinating men in such conditions. You're not even at the enemy yet, and you're already exhausted, damp, and vaguely wishing you'd picked a career in, say, basket weaving. The worst part? This is a good morning. No dysentery, no arrow in your leg, yet. The command comes, March! You move, not out of bravery, but because staying behind means a desertion charge, and that usually ends with something getting chopped off. So you trudge, one squelching step at a time, the ground sucking at your boots like it's auditioning for a horror flick. Your shoulders ache, your thighs burn, and your chainmail's forming a personal vendetta against your skin. You're a walking bruise, and the day's just getting started. The camp fades behind you, but its stench lingers, a mix of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and whatever's rotting near the food cart. You spot a guy ahead, humming a war song that's more dirge than anthem. Another's muttering prayers, probably hedging his bets with every saint he can name. One dude in the back just screams into the wind and nobody stops him. It's honestly kind of therapeutic. You think, maybe the enemy will surrender before you get there. Then you remember they're probably thinking the same thing, which means this'll end in a mess of panic, stabbing, and you trying to recall which end of the spear's the pointy one. A hill looms ahead, because of course every medieval battle's gotta be at the top of a dumb hill. Someone slips on the climb and rolls down, and nobody helps. He's probably better off down there. You keep marching, your boots slipping in mud that's now more soup than soil. The air's getting thicker, the tension's building, and you're starting to feel like you're in one of those dreams where you're running, but not getting anywhere. Except here, there's no waking up, just more mud, more yelling, and the promise of a fight you didn't sign up for. You reach the camp for the night, if you can call it that. It's less a base and more a petri dish for every disease known to man. Tents are for nobles. You get a patch of ground that's only slightly less cursed than the rest. You collapse, claiming your spot by sheer force of not moving. Your neighbor does the same, and congratulations, you've just founded a trench community. The smell hits next, a horrifying blend of wet wool, unwashed feet, and something that might be the food cart or might be a dead animal. Flies are everywhere, some so bold you're tempted to name them. You make peace with it. They're basically camp mascots now. Dinner's a bowl of stew that's gray in both color and personality. You ask the cook what's in it, and he stares at you for 5 seconds before walking away. Never a good sign. You eat anyway, because hunger's a great motivator, and you're hoping whatever's in there wasn't anyone's pet 2 hours ago. Some guys sharpen their weapons, others play dice. A few pray so loud it's clear they're fishing for divine VIP status. Then there's the guy singing about bread, off-key, and with way too much passion. You're not sure if he's drunk or just broken. The sounds of the camp are a symphony of misery, hacking coughs, distant sobbing, a lute being played like it's a war crime. A knight barks an order, his armor spotless, his scent suspiciously like lavender. You hate him on principle. Night falls, and you curl up in your damp cloak, next to a guy who snores like he's choking on a goat. Sleep's a distant dream, your brain too busy listing all the ways you could die tomorrow. Stabbed, trampled, or maybe that goat'll kick you in the ribs again. As you start to doze, a voice yells, "Form up at sunrise." Awesome. Another perfect day awaits. You're not a hero, not a knight, just a guy trying to make it through without losing a limb or your lunch. The camp's a mess, the march was hell, and the battle's coming like a storm you can't outrun. You close your eyes, the fans hum in your room, a faint echo of the wind outside your cloak, and you wonder how anyone survived this. Spoiler, most didn't. But you're still here for now, and that's gotta count for something. You're still here somehow, blinking awake in the dim pre-dawn light, the memory of last night's mud and misery clinging to you like a bad dream. No time to linger on that, though. Your day's already off to a rough start. The camp's stirring, a chaotic jumble of groans and clanking armor, and you've got to get moving before the sergeant's yelling becomes your personal alarm clock. Your chainmail's fused to your body now, every link digging into your skin like it's got a personal vendetta. You try to stretch, but your muscles scream in protest, and the cold, damp ground you slept on feels like it's left a permanent dent in your spine. The air's thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and last night's questionable stew, and you're pretty sure you'll never smell clean again. You fumble for your gear, your fingers stiff from the chill. Your helmet's nearby, half buried in the mud, and you fish it out, shaking off a slug that's decided it's prime real estate. No mirror, no toothbrush, just a quick splash of swampy water on your face, which you pretend counts as hygiene. It's less about feeling fresh and more about not looking like you just crawled out of a bog, though, let's be honest, you totally did. Your boots are soaked, the leather creaking with every move, and you're starting to wonder if trenchfoot's just a vibe you're committing to now. Around you, other soldiers are dragging themselves upright, each with the same look of, why didn't I become a baker? One guy's trying to untangle his cloak from a thorn bush, cursing like it's the bush's fault he's here. Another's staring into the distance, probably imagining a life where he doesn't have to dodge arrows before breakfast. Speaking of breakfast, it's waiting for you, and it's every bit as disappointing as you'd expect. You're handed a crust of bread so hard it could knock out a horse, paired with a chunk of something that's either cheese or a war crime. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring it, there's nothing to savor, but because your jaw's still recovering from yesterday's meal, which might have included a vegetable in a past life. You wash it down with a swig of warm ale, because the local water's a gamble you're not desperate enough to take. Medieval hydration's like playing spin the bottle with dysentery, and you're not feeling that lucky today. You glance at the guy next to you, who's gnawing on his bread like it's a personal challenge. He mutters something about how this is better than the time they served mystery stew that moved on its own. You don't ask for details. Mainstream fact. In the Middle Ages, soldiers often relied on ale or weak beer for hydration, as water sources were frequently contaminated, especially in army camps. Records from the 100 Years' War show armies budgeting more for ale than for weapons in some cases. Quirky tidbit, some soldiers carried small charms like a rabbit's foot or a saint's relic, believing they'd protect against disease or bad luck, though they probably just made their pockets smell worse. Historians still argue whether the high disease rates in medieval armies were due more to poor sanitation or the sheer exhaustion of marching in heavy armor. You strap on your gear, which smells like it's been fermenting in a mix of fear and old sweat. Your chainmail's heavy, each link rubbing your skin raw, and your sword's scabbard keeps banging against your thigh like it's trying to start a fight. You're not sure if you're ready for battle, but you're definitely ready to be done with this armor. The camp's buzzing now, men shuffling into some semblance of order, though it's less a formation and more a grumpy huddle. A guy nearby is trying to fix his shield, which has a crack the size of a dinner plate, muttering about how it held up fine last time. You don't point out that last time probably ended with him hiding behind a bigger guy. Orders come, sharp and loud, from a knight on a horse who looks like he's never seen mud in his life. Form up! Move out! He bellows, his voice cutting through the morning fog. You roll your eyes, easy for him to sound chipper when he's not wading through ankle-deep sludge. The army stirs, armor clanking, men grumbling about everything from the food to the weather to the fact that nobody's paid them in weeks. You fall into line, your boots squelching with every step, the mud pulling at you like it's got a personal grudge. It's not just dirt, it's the kind of mud that feels alive, like it's plotting to steal your boots and your dignity. You adjust a strap on your chest and the guy behind you hisses, "Keep moving, or I'll shove you into the next ditch." You don't turn around. You've got enough enemies waiting up ahead. The march hasn't even started, and you're already exhausted, your body a map of aches and bruises. Your shoulders scream under the weight of your armor, your thighs burn from the effort of pulling your boots free from the muck, and your stomach staging a quiet rebellion against that bread. You're hungry, damp, and starting to think this whole soldier thing was a terrible career move. The air's heavy with the smell of wet wool and unwashed bodies, and someone ahead lets out a fart so loud it could wake the dead. You try breathing through your mouth, but that's a rookie mistake. You just taste the camp's collective bad decisions. You pass a broken cart, a pile of discarded gear, and what looks suspiciously like a finger. Nobody stops. Stopping's for people who want to be yelled at, and the sergeant's already warming up his vocal cords. You're not sure how far you've got to go, but every step feels like a mile. The ground's uneven, all rocks and roots hidden under the mud, and you're half convinced it's trying to trip you just for laughs. Your armor's not helping. It's like wearing a blacksmith shop, every piece clanking and pinching in all the wrong places. You're basically a walking bruise, and the day's barely begun. The guy next to you's muttering about how he once saw a knight get taken out by a stray chicken, and you're not sure if he's joking or just delirious. Either way, it's the kind of story that keeps you going, because if a chicken can win a fight, maybe you've got a shot. The camp's fading behind you, but its stench lingers, a mix of rotting food, sweaty men, and whatever's festering in the latrine. You're starting to think the enemy might surrender just to avoid smelling you all. The line stretches out, a ragged snake of men and metal, and you wonder how anyone keeps track of who's who in this mess. The sergeant's still yelling, his voice a constant drone, like a mosquito you can't swat. Some guys try to sing to keep their spirits up, but it's less rousing ballad and more drunk guy at karaoke. One dude in the back just screams, and you're starting to think he's got the right idea. Let it all out before the real fight starts. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the day without losing a limb or your lunch. The march is brutal, the camp was a nightmare, and the battle's looming like a storm you can't outrun. You keep moving, one miserable step at a time, because the alternative's worse. Your boots squelch, your armor clanks, and your stomach's still grumbling about that bread. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this muddy hell. But for now, you're here, slogging through the muck, wondering how you'll survive what's coming next. You're still trudging, each step a battle against the mud that's got a death grip on your boots. The camp's a distant memory now, its stench replaced by the fresh misery of open country, wet grass, rotting leaves, and the faint whiff of something that might be a dead animal or just your own despair. Your chainmail's rubbing your skin raw, every link a tiny torturer, and your sword's banging against your thigh like it's trying to escape. The march is relentless, a slow grind through terrain that seems designed to break you before the enemy even gets a chance. You're hungry, your stomach's still mad about that rock-hard bread, and the warm ale's doing nothing to help. Your legs burn, your shoulders ache, and you're starting to think this whole soldier gig was a scam. The ground's a mess, less earth and more a swampy soup that sucks at your boots with every step. It's not just mud, it's the kind that feels personal, like it's out to steal your soul, or at least your left foot. You slip on a hidden root, nearly face-planting, and the guy behind you snarls, "Move it, or I'll use you as a bridge." You don't reply. You're too busy trying to keep your balance and your dignity. The line of soldiers stretches out, a ragged chain of clanking metal and muttered curses. Some guys are humming war songs, but they sound more like funeral dirges. One dude's praying so loud you're pretty sure he's trying to get God's attention via volume alone. Another just screams into the wind, and you're starting to think he's the sanest one here. Mainstream fact, medieval marches were grueling, often covering 10 to 20 miles a day, with soldiers like those at the Battle of Hastings in 1066 carrying up to 70 pounds of gear, leading to exhaustion before combat even began. Quirky tidbit, some soldiers tied bells to their armor, believing the noise would scare off evil spirits, though it mostly just annoyed everyone else. Historians still argue whether the high casualty rates on marches were due more to disease or the sheer physical toll of moving in heavy armor. Your armor's a nightmare, pinching and chafing in places you didn't know could hurt. It's like wearing a blacksmith's scrap pile. Every step a reminder that this gear was not designed for hiking. Your shoulders are screaming, your thighs are plotting a mutiny, and your chainmail's turned your sweat into a personal sauna. You're a walking bruise, and the day's nowhere near done. The air's thick with the smell of livestock, cheap onions, and someone's regrettable lunch choice. You try breathing through your mouth, but that's a mistake. You just taste the collective funk of 100 unwashed men. You pass a broken wheel, a dead bird, and something that looks like a finger, but you don't stop. Stopping's for suckers who want the sergeant's boot in their back. The sergeant, by the way, is still yelling, his voice a constant buzz like a wasp you can't swat. "Keep the line! Move it!" he barks, as if you're all just dawdling for fun. You roll your eyes, easy for him to sound tough when he's not sinking into mud up to his ankles. The line's a mess, men stumbling over rocks and roots, some limping from blisters or bad luck. The guy next to you's muttering about how he once saw a knight trip over his own sword and cry about it. You're not sure if he's joking, but it's the kind of story that keeps you going, proof that even the fancy folks screw up sometimes. You adjust your shield, which is starting to feel like it's made of lead, and keep moving, one squelching step at a time. The terrain's getting worse, all hills and bogs that make every step a gamble. You're climbing now, a slow slog up a slope that's more mud than solid ground. Someone ahead slips and slides back down, cursing the whole way, and nobody helps. He's on his own. You grit your teeth and push on, your boots slipping, your heart pounding. The air's heavy, the tension's thicker than the mud, and you're starting to feel like you're in one of those nightmares where you're running but going nowhere. Except here, there's no waking up, just more marching, more yelling, and the promise of a fight you're not sure you're ready for. You're not even thinking about the enemy yet. You're too busy fighting the ground, the gear, and the gnawing hunger in your gut. Your stomach's staging a full-on revolt, and you're half tempted to eat a handful of grass just to shut it up. The guy in front of you's muttering about how he once traded his dagger for a half-rotten apple and called it a win. You don't laugh, but you get it. Out here, any food's a victory. The line stretches out, a snake of tired men in creaking armor, and you wonder how anyone keeps track of this mess. Some guys try to sing to keep their spirits up, but it's less rousing anthem and more drunk uncle at a wedding. One dude's just screaming, and you're starting to think he's got the right idea. Let it all out before the real chaos hits. The hill's getting steeper, and every step feels like a personal insult. Your boots are caked in mud, each one weighing twice what it did this morning. Your shield's banging against your arm, your sword's still trying to trip you, and your chainmail's rubbing your neck raw. You're a walking disaster, and the battle's still miles away. The air's thick with the smell of wet wool and unwashed bodies, and someone ahead lets out a fart so loud it could scare off a bear. You try not to breathe, but that's not an option. You need air, even if it tastes like regret. You pass a shattered cart, a pile of bones, and what might be a sock. Nobody stops, nobody cares. You're all just trying to survive the march. You're starting to think the enemy might not be the worst part of this day. The mud, the armor, the sergeant, they're all doing a fine job of breaking you already. You're hungry, tired, and soaked to the bone, and you're starting to wonder if desertion's really that bad. Sure, they'd chop something off, but at least you'd be out of this mud. The thought passes. You're not that desperate yet. You keep moving, one miserable step at a time, the ground sucking at your boots like it's got a vendetta. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this hell. But for now, you're here, slogging through the muck, wondering if you'll ever feel dry again. You're still slogging through the muck, your boots heavier with every step, the memory of that endless march clinging to you like the mud itself. The hill's behind you now, thank whatever saint's listening, but relief's a fleeting dream. You've reached the battle camp, and calling it a camp is generous. It's more like a swampy yard sale for misery. The ground's a churned-up mess, half mud, half despair, and the air's thick with the stench of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and something that's either the food cart or a science experiment gone wrong. Your chainmail's still rubbing your skin raw, your sword's banging against your thigh, and you're pretty sure your stomach's filed for divorce after that last crust of bread. You're exhausted, damp, and wondering if this is what hell looks like when it's having a bad day. You collapse onto a patch of ground that's only slightly less cursed than the rest, claiming it as your bed with the enthusiasm of a guy who's given up on comfort. Your neighbor does the same, flopping down with a squelch, and just like that, you've started a trench community. Congratulations, the flies are everywhere. a buzzing cloud so bold you're tempted to name them. There's one on your arm now, and you swat it away, half expecting it to come back with friends. You've made peace with them. They're practically camp mascots at this point. The smell hits next, a gut punch of fermented boots, rotting scraps, and whatever's festering near the latrine. It's the kind of stench that doesn't just linger, it moves in and starts redecorating. Speaking of the latrine, it's a nightmare you can't unsee. It's just a shallow hole in the ground, dug with haste and regret, offering zero privacy and a smell that could wake the dead. You avoid eye contact with anyone else trudging over there, because dignity's a luxury nobody's got right now. You try to focus on something else, like the bowl of stew someone hands you. It's gray, not just in color, but in personality, and you're pretty sure it's the culinary equivalent of giving up. You ask the cook what's in it, and he locks eyes with you for 5 uncomfortable seconds before walking away. Never a good sign. You eat anyway, because hunger's a great motivator, and you're hoping whatever's in there wasn't someone's pet a few hours ago. The guy next to you slurping his down like it's fine dining, muttering about how it's better than the time they served soup with a bone that looks suspiciously human. You don't ask for details. Mainstream fact: medieval army camps, like those during the Crusades, were breeding grounds for disease, with dysentery and infections killing more soldiers than actual combat, often due to poor sanitation and contaminated water. Quirky tidbit: some camps had a guy whose job was to chase rats away from the food stores, though he usually just ended up as the camp's unofficial pet wrangler. Historians still argue whether the high death rates at camps were due more to bad hygiene or the lack of any real medical knowledge. The camp's a chaotic mess, a mix of men sharpening weapons, playing dice, and praying loud enough to make sure God's taking notes. One guy's singing about bread, off-key and with way too much heart, and you're not sure if he's drunk or just broken. Another's trying to play a lute like it's a weapon, each note a crime against music. The sounds are a symphony of misery, hacking coughs, distant sobbing, and the occasional clank of armor as someone trips over their own gear. A knight strides through, barking orders, his armor spotless and his scent suspiciously like lavender. You hate him instantly, not just because he's clean, but because he's got the nerve to look smug about it. You're caked in mud, your boots are a lost cause, and you're pretty sure you've got a blister the size of a coin on your foot. You try to rest, curling up in your damp cloak, but sleep's a pipe dream. The guy next to you snores like he's swallowed a donkey, and every time you close your eyes, your brain starts listing all the ways you could die tomorrow. Stabbed, trampled, or maybe that goat you saw earlier will finish you off. The camp's alive with activity, but it's not the good kind. Men are sharpening blades, checking shields, or just staring into the distance like they're rehearsing their last words. One guy's praying so loud it's clear he's angling for divine VIP status, while another's muttering about how he once saw a knight get taken out by a stray chicken. You don't laugh, but it's the kind of story that keeps you going, proof that even the fancy folks aren't invincible. The latrine's still haunting you, its smell drifting over like a curse nobody can lift. You're tempted to hold your breath for the rest of the night, but that's not an option. You need air, even if it tastes like regret. The food cart's nearby, and you're pretty sure it's the source of half the camp's problems. The other half's probably the flies, which are now holding a convention on your cloak. You swat at them, but they're relentless, like tiny generals planning their next attack. You're starting to think they're the real enemy here, not whoever's waiting on the other side of that hill. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the night without losing your lunch or your nerve. The camp's a disaster, the march was hell, and the battle's coming like a storm you can't outrun. You shift in your cloak, trying to find a spot that's not actively trying to drown you, and you wonder how anyone survives this. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this muddy nightmare. But for now, you're here, surrounded by flies and snores, waiting for the dawn and whatever fresh chaos it brings. You're still curled up in your damp cloak, the camp's stench and chaos pressing in like uninvited guests. Sleep's a distant fantasy. your neighbor's snores rattling through the night like a sawmill on overtime. The flies are still holding their convention, buzzing around your face with the kind of enthusiasm you wish you could muster. The air's heavy with the smell of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and that cursed latrine, its odor drifting over like a ghost that won't quit. Your chainmail's digging into your ribs, your boots are a soggy prison, and you're pretty sure your stomach's still mad about that gray stew. The battle's looming, a dark promise hanging over the camp, and you're caught between dread and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, you'll make it through tomorrow without a spear in your gut. You shift, trying to find a spot that's not actively trying to drown you, but the ground's a cold, muddy traitor. Every move sends a jolt through your aching muscles, and your armor's rubbing your skin raw. Each link a tiny reminder that comfort's not on the menu. The camp's alive with restless energy, a mix of hacking coughs, muttered prayers, and the occasional clank of armor as someone trips over their own gear. One guy's singing about bread again, his voice cracking like he's auditioning for the world's saddest choir. Another's playing a lute, each note a crime against harmony, and you're starting to wonder if the enemy's sending spies to torture you with bad music. A knight strides through, barking orders, his armor gleaming, and his scent suspiciously like lavender. You hate him more than ever, not just for being clean, but for having the gall to look smug about it. Mainstream fact. Medieval soldiers often spent sleepless nights before battles, as seen in accounts from the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, where exhaustion and fear eroded morale more than enemy arrows. Quirky tidbit, some soldiers tucked sprigs of herbs like rosemary into their helmets, believing it would keep them alert, though it mostly just made them smell like a walking stew. Historians still argue whether pre-battle insomnia was due more to psychological dread or the physical discomfort of sleeping in armor on muddy ground. You try to close your eyes, but your brain's too busy running a highlight reel of all the ways you could die tomorrow. Stabbed, trampled, or maybe that goat you saw earlier will get revenge. The snores from the guy next to you are a full-on assault, each one shaking the ground like a tiny earthquake. You're tempted to nudge him, but he's built like a barn, and you're not in the mood for a fistfight before the real fight. Instead, you stare at the sky, the stars blurred by the camp's smoke and your own exhaustion. The flies are relentless, one landing on your nose like it's claiming territory. You swat it away, half expecting it to come back with a tiny flag. The camp's sounds are a grim symphony. Coughing, sobbing, and the occasional shout from someone who's either dreaming or just given up on sanity. One guy's praying so loud it's clear he's angling for divine VIP status, rattling off saints like he's reading a menu. Another's muttering about how he once saw a knight slip in mud and cry for his mom. You don't laugh, but it's the kind of story that keeps you going, proof that even the shiny folks aren't bulletproof. You shift again, your cloak sticking to your skin, and you're pretty sure you've got a blister the size of a walnut on your foot. Sleep's not happening, not with the snores, the flies, and the creeping dread that's settled in your gut like a bad tenant. You're not sure what time it is, but the sky is starting to lighten, a faint gray creeping in like it's as reluctant as you are. The camp's stirring, men dragging themselves upright, their faces a mix of fear and resignation. You fumble for your gear, your fingers stiff from the cold, and your helmet still damp from last night's mud. You shake it out, hoping no slugs have moved in, and strap it on, the weight pressing against your skull like a bad headache. Your sword's still banging against your thigh, and you're starting to think it's got a personal grudge. You're not ready for battle, but you're definitely ready to be done with this camp and its endless assault on your senses. The latrine's still haunting you, its smell drifting over like a curse you can't shake. You're tempted to hold your breath until dawn, but that's not an option. You need air, even if it tastes like regret. The food cart's nearby, and you're pretty sure it's the source of half the camp's misery. The other half's the flies, which are now staging a full-on invasion of your cloak. You swat at them, but they're relentless, like tiny generals plotting their next move. You're starting to think they're the real enemy, not whoever's waiting on the other side of that hill. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the night without losing your nerve or your lunch. The camp's a nightmare, the march was a slog, and the battle's coming like a storm you can't dodge. You shift one last time, trying to find a spot that's not actively trying to drown you, and you wonder if you'll ever feel warm again. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this muddy hell. But for now, you're here, surrounded by snores and flies, waiting for the dawn, and whatever fresh chaos it brings. You're still huddled in your damp cloak, the camp's relentless snores and stench fading as the first hints of dawn creep over the horizon. The flies have finally given you a break, or maybe they're just regrouping for a morning assault. Your chainmail's still digging into your ribs, your boots are a soggy prison, and your stomach's muttering threats about that gray stew from last night. Sleep never came, just a restless haze of dread and discomfort, and now the camp's stirring, a grim shuffle of men dragging themselves toward the inevitable. A distant trumpet blares, sharp and unforgiving, and you know it's time. Battle's calling, and there's no hitting snooze on this one. You crawl out of your cloak, your body a map of aches, and join the ragged line forming up, pretending you're ready for what's coming. The air's cold, biting at your face, and the ground's still a muddy traitor, sucking at your boots with every step. You fumble for your gear, your fingers numb, and your helmet's damp weight presses against your skull like a bad memory. Your sword's still banging against your thigh, and you're starting to think it's cursed to annoy you forever. Around you, men groan and shuffle into rows, their faces a mix of fear, exhaustion, and the kind of resignation you see in someone who's lost a bet. The guy next to you's trembling, his helmet on backward, and his shield looks like it's seen better days, probably as a barn door. You don't say anything. You're too busy trying to remember which end of your spear's the pointy one. Mainstream fact, medieval battles like the Battle of Towton in 1461 often began with chaotic formations, as poorly trained levies struggled to maintain order under the pressure of imminent combat. Quirky tidbit, some soldiers painted crude symbols on their shields, like a pig or a turnip, to stand out in the melee, though it mostly just confused everyone. Historians still argue whether the disorganized lines at dawn were due more to lack of discipline or the sheer terror of facing death. A noble commander appears, his armor so polished it's practically glowing, like he's stepped out of a fairy tale you weren't invited to. He's got that smug energy of someone who's never been punched in the face, and you instantly resent him. He clears his throat and everyone braces, knowing what's coming. Men, today we fight for glory, he bellows, pausing for effect like he's waiting for applause. Someone near you coughs up something that sounds alive. For our king, our lands, our honor, he continues. And the crowd murmurs, mostly from stomach cramps, not patriotism. You glance sideways, the guy with the backward helmet's shaking so hard his armor's rattling, his shield's bent, and you're pretty sure he's not making it to lunch. The commander's speech drones on, all about how the enemy fears you, doubtful, and how you'll die as heroes, not inspiring. You suppress the urge to raise your hand and ask, "Can I die later, maybe as a baker?" He throws in some stuff about God being on your side, which is nice, except you're pretty sure God's been busy smiting everyone equally this season. The speech ends with a dramatic sword thrust to the sky and a shout of "Forward!" Nobody moves. A few guys blink, one sneezes. The shouting continues until someone shuffles forward, and the rest of you reluctantly follow, not out of conviction, but because standing still means the commander might pick you for a special job. You've heard what happened to the last volunteer. You're in line now, your shield heavy on your arm, your spear feeling more like a liability than a weapon. The camp's chaos fades behind you, but its smell lingers. Wet wool, unwashed bodies, and that cursed latrine. The ground's still muddy, each step a squelching fight, and you're already exhausted, your legs burning from yesterday's march. The air's thick with tension, the kind that sits in your gut like a bad meal. Men whisper prayers, their voices shaky, and one guy's quietly sobbing. You pretend not to notice, mostly because you're busy making your own peace with whatever's out there. The guy in front of you's shield is upside down, and he's using it to scratch his back. You don't point it out. You've got enough problems. The commander's still up there, pristine on his horse, shouting orders like he's directing a play. You're not sure if he's inspiring or just annoying, but either way, you're not buying what he's selling. The line's a mess. Men stumbling over each other, some still trying to figure out their helmets. One guy's gripping a pitchfork, and you're pretty sure he wandered in from a farm by mistake. The sergeant's barking numbers that nobody understands, but you nod like you get it, because arguing's a quick way to get extra duty. Front line, shield wall, he screams, and you shuffle forward, your heart pounding, your shield feeling flimsier by the second. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the next hour without losing a limb or your lunch. The camp was a nightmare, the march was hell, and now the battle's here, a storm you can't outrun. You grip your spear, your hands sweaty, and try to ignore the guy behind you, who's breathing like he's practicing for a dramatic death scene. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this muddy chaos. But for now, you're here, in a crooked line of terrified men, waiting for the world to explode. You're still clutching your spear, the crooked line of men around you shuffling forward like a herd of spooked cattle. The dawn's gray light is giving way to a sickly haze, the air thick with the smell of mud, sweat, and the faint tang of fear. Your chainmail's rubbing your skin raw, your shield's heavier than ever, and your boots are caked in muck that's starting to feel like part of you. The commander's speech is a fading echo, his polished armor and lofty words about glory already irrelevant. The ground squelches underfoot, and you're trying to ignore the guy behind you, whose dramatic breathing's now a full-on soundtrack for doom. The battle's here, and it's not some Silk Route saga of elegant duels. It's a brutal, chaotic mess waiting to swallow you whole. A soft whoosh cuts through the air, like a whisper you wish you could unhear. Someone shouts, "Shields up!" and you scramble to obey, your arms screaming as you hoist your shield, your old pal Buddy, over your head. The guy next to you's still fumbling with his, muttering curses as he tries to figure out which ends up. The sky darkens, not with clouds, but with a swarm of arrows, tiny death sticks launched with way too much enthusiasm from the enemy's side. They fall like angry rain, thudding into shields, ground, and flesh. A man 2 rows ahead drops, an arrow jutting from his shoulder like a quill left in a hurry. Someone screams, another curses in what might be Latin or just a sneeze. It's hard to tell in the panic. Mainstream fact: medieval battles like the Battle of Crécy in 1346 often began with devastating arrow volleys from longbows, which could pierce armor and kill dozens in seconds, shaping the chaos of early combat. Quirky tidbit: some archers carved rude messages into their arrows, hoping to taunt the enemy, though most targets were too busy dodging to read them. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of arrow barrages was due more to their sheer volume or the psychological terror they inflicted. You shrink behind Buddy, your shield suddenly feeling like a flimsy piece of wood against a storm of steel-tipped hate. An arrow clatters off it with a metallic clang, and you whisper a quick thanks to your lopsided friend, promising never to badmouth its shape again. To your left, a guy's cursing the archers, his voice cracking with panic. To your right, someone's being cursed for forgetting to duck, an arrow grazing his arm. Behind you, a man's yelling he's hit, though you suspect he's just trying to sit this one out. You don't blame him, every instinct screaming to run, but there's nowhere to go. The line's a mess, men crouching, shouting, or just freezing like deer caught in a hunter's gaze. The second volley comes, and any hope of calm evaporates. Arrows thud around you, some sticking in the mud, others finding softer targets. A man nearby drops with a grunt, an arrow in his thigh, and you try not to look, focusing on keeping Buddy between you and the sky. Veterans crouch low, muttering mantras like they've seen this movie before. Newbies cry openly, their shields shaking. One guy lies down, playing dead, and you're low-key jealous of his strategy. The sky clears, and you're still breathing. Buddy's earned his keep. But the real horror's coming, the part where you get up close and personal with the enemy, where it's all sweat, steel, and screams. No dramatic drum roll, no heroic charge like the ballads promise, just a sudden surge, your side lurching forward with the reluctant momentum of men who know they'll be trampled if they hesitate. Someone ahead yells something meant to be inspiring, then trips and gets stepped on. You don't stop, not out of cruelty, but because pausing means joining him in the mud. The lines collide, a bone-jarring crash of shields and bodies, like two sacks of potatoes slamming together with sharp edges. Forget fancy swordplay. This is a meat blender. You swing your spear, less aiming and more flailing, hoping it hits something that's not you. Metal crashes against metal, wood splinters, and someone's yelling like it's a war chant, though it sounds more like panic with a beat. The fighting's close, so close you're breathing the enemy's sweat, a mix of fear, onions, and cheap ale. Personal space is a myth. There's just you, your spear, and a wall of angry faces. You stab downward, praying it's not your own foot, and your helmet fogs up, turning the world into a sweaty blur. Someone's shoulder slams into your ribs and you stumble, gasping, your shield banging against your arm. There's blood on your glove. Whose? You don't know, and you don't care. A man swings at your head. You duck on instinct, and he hits someone else. You exchange a glance, half apology, half better you than me, and keep swinging, mostly missing, occasionally connecting. Every now and then someone falls, some screaming, others going quiet in a way that chills you more. You try not to look because looking means thinking, and thinking means hesitating. This isn't a movie, it's a bar fight at the world's worst tavern, with 500 angry drunks and no bouncer to break it up. The noise is deafening, screams, not just from the wounded, but from men psyching themselves up, men who've been stabbed, men who forgot whose side they're on and are swinging at anything that moves. Swords clang against shields, maces thump against flesh with a sickening crunch, and arrows still whistle past. Their sound, a sharp reminder of regret. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the next minute without losing a limb or your nerve. The camp was a nightmare. The march was hell. And now you're in the thick of it, a storm of steel and chaos you can't escape. You grip your spear, your hands slick with sweat, and keep moving because stopping's not an option. The fan's hum in your room is a faint anchor, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this bloody mess. But for now, you're here, in a sweaty, screaming melee, praying Buddy's got your back. You're still in the thick of it, the battlefield a sweaty, screaming chaos where every breath feels like a gamble. Your spear's slick in your hands, your shield, good old Buddy, banged up but holding strong. The air's heavy with the stench of blood, mud, and panic, the ground a churned-up mess that grabs at your boots like it's hungry for more. Your chainmail's rubbing your skin raw, your helmet's fogged up, and you're pretty sure your ribs are bruised from that last shove. Arrows are still falling, though less now, their thuds and whistles a grim reminder that death's got a long reach. The enemy's right in your face, a wall of angry steel and bad breath. And you're swinging, ducking, and praying you don't stab your own foot. This isn't some Silk Roots legend of noble combat. It's a brutal, messy fight for survival, and you're just trying to stay upright. A warhorse thunders past, its hooves churning the mud into a spray that splatters your face. You flinch, nearly dropping Buddy, as the knight atop it swings a mace like he's auditioning for a nightmare. Horses don't care about sides. They're just giant battering rams with anxiety issues, flattening anyone dumb enough to be in their way. You duck low, your heart pounding, and see a guy get trampled, vanishing under hooves like he was never there. Another tries to grab a knight's leg, misses. and gets kicked so hard he's probably seeing stars or angels. You learn fast out here. Don't be under the horse. It's a rule written in mud and blood, and you're not about to test it. Mainstream fact, cavalry charges like those at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314 were devastating in medieval warfare, with war horses trained to plow through infantry, causing panic and high casualties. Quirky tidbit, some knights tied bells to their horses, thinking the noise would scare enemies, though it mostly just spooked their own mounts. Historians still argue whether cavalry's effectiveness came more from their physical impact or the sheer terror they inspired. You shrink behind, buddy, your shield taking another hit from an arrow that clangs off like a rude guest. You whisper thanks to your lopsided pal, promising it a place of honor if you survive. Maybe a nice shelf in whatever hovel you call home. The melee's a blur, men swinging swords, axes, and what looks like a glorified kitchen knife. You flail your spear, less strategy and more survival, hoping it hits something that's not you. A man lunges at you, his face twisted in rage or fear. You can't tell. You parry with Buddy, your arm screaming, and stab back, feeling the spear connect with something soft. You don't look. You just keep moving, because stopping means dying. The noise is a living thing. A cacophony of screams, clangs, and wet squelches that burrow into your skull. Men yell to psych themselves up, yell because they're hurt, yell because they stepped on a rock and forgot how to aim. A high-pitched whimper comes from a guy who's realized he's on the wrong side, swinging wildly at a bush. Somewhere, a horse screams, a sound so haunting it makes your spine reconsider standing upright. You try to focus, but your ears are ringing. Your brain on overload, running on instinct because thinking's a luxury you can't afford. You duck another swing, your helmet slipping, and stumble sideways, your boots sliding in mud that's now more blood than earth. You're not sure how long you've been fighting. Minutes? Hours? Time's a blur measured in gasps and near misses. A knight crashes nearby, his shiny armor no match for the mud, and he flails like a turtle on its back, cursing as someone jabs at him. You don't help. You're too busy dodging a guy with an axe who looks like he's got a personal grudge against your face. You swing your spear, miss, and nearly trip over a body, friend or foe, you don't know. The ground's littered with them now, some still, some twitching, and you try not to think about who they were. This isn't a movie, it's a slaughterhouse with worse lighting. You're exhausted, your arms shaking, your breath ragged, your chainmail's heavier than ever, your shield's dented, and you're pretty sure you've got a bruise the size of a dinner plate. Another arrow whistles past, grazing your arm, and you hiss, pressing closer to Buddy. You're alive somehow, but the battle's far from over. Horses still charge, men still scream, and you're still swinging, because stopping's not an option. The guy next to you goes down, an arrow in his chest, and you don't look. Looking means feeling, and feeling means breaking. You keep moving, one desperate step at a time, praying the chaos shifts somewhere else. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the next heartbeat without losing a limb or your nerve. The camp was a nightmare. The march was hell. And this fight's a storm you can't outrun. You grip your spear, your hands slick with sweat and maybe blood, and keep going, because that's all you've got left. The fan's hum in your room is a faint lifeline, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this bloody mess. But for now, you're here, dodging horses and arrows, clinging to Buddy like it's the only friend you've got. You're still standing somehow, your spear slick with sweat and your shield, Buddy, battered but loyal. The battlefield's a churned-up nightmare, the air thick with the stench of blood, mud, and broken dreams. Your chainmail's a torture device now, rubbing your skin raw, and your boots are so caked in muck they feel like anchors. The screams and clangs of combat are fading, replaced by groans and the eerie quiet of a fight winding down. You're not sure how it ended. No trumpets, no dramatic retreat, just fewer swings, less shouting, and more men limping away. The ground's littered with bodies, weapons, and a lone boot perched on a rock like it's waiting for its owner to come back. You're alive, bruised, and wondering if this counts as victory or just not being dead yet. You stagger back toward camp, each step a fight against the mud and your own exhaustion. Your spear drags behind you, useless now, and Buddy's slung over your shoulder, dented but proud. The air's heavy with the smell of blood and smoke, and your stomach's churning, still mad about that gray stew, or maybe just the sight of it all. Men shuffle around you, some clutching loot, a sword, a helmet, a pair of boots that aren't theirs. Nobody talks much. There's a shared silence, the kind that comes when you've seen too much to put into words. You pass a guy yelling victory while holding his arm, which is hanging at a bad angle. You nod because sure, you're upright, breathing, and mostly unstabbed. That's close enough. Mainstream fact. After medieval battles like the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, survivors often looted the dead, taking weapons and armor to sell or use, as armies rarely provided enough gear. Quirky tidbit, some soldiers believed rubbing mud from a battlefield on their wounds would heal them, though it usually just led to infections. Historians still argue whether post-battle looting was driven more by survival needs or simple opportunism. You reach the camp, a familiar mess of mud and misery, and collapse onto a patch of ground that's only slightly less cursed than the battlefield. The flies are back, buzzing like they're celebrating your return, and you swat at one half-heartedly. It's practically family now. The stench hits next, a mix of wet wool, unwashed bodies, and that cursed latrine still haunting you like a bad ex. You're handed a jug of warm ale, and you drink deep, not because it's good, but because it's there. The food cart's nearby, dishing out bread that's more weapon than snack, but you're too tired to care. You chew slowly, your jaw aching, and try not to think about the guy you saw go down with an arrow in his chest. Men gather around fires, their faces lit by flickering flames, and the storytelling starts. It's not about truth, it's about survival, turning trauma into something you can laugh at. One guy swears he took down 6 knights with a broken dagger, waving his hands like he's directing a play. Another claims he caught an arrow midair and threw it back, and you nod, because why not? You've got your own story, carefully edited. That moment you tripped over a body and screamed? Nah, that was a strategic retreat. Hiding behind Buddy during the arrow storm? Call it a tactical shield maneuver. You skip the part where you begged a guy to hold your hand when the horses charged. Everyone's got their own version of the truth tonight. The camp's alive with these tales, a mix of dry laughter and desperate bravado. A guy plays a lute with 2 strings, the tune so off it's almost soothing. A woman, a camp follower, patches a cloak nearby, humming like the battlefield's a world away. You stare into the fire, the flames dancing like they know your secrets. You're filthy, traumatized, and possibly concussed, but you're here, sipping ale that tastes like regret and swapping lies with men who know exactly how much of your story's fake. It's not about ego, it's about making it through the night without the memories catching up. The cleanup started, a grim task that's half triage, half scavenging. Medics, guys with knives and 0 training, wander through muttering, "That's gotta come off," like it's their catchphrase. You see one stitching a gash with a needle that's been sterilized by waving it near a fire, and you're glad your cuts are just scratches. Bodies are dragged into piles, some covered, most not, and you recognize a face or two, but don't linger. The smell's turning spiritual, a mix of blood, mud, and rot that clings to your lungs. Flies swarm, thrilled by the buffet, and one lands on your hand. You let it stay, too tired to care. You loot too, because out here, survival's practical. You snag a pair of boots from a guy who doesn't need them anymore. Sorry, pal, but yours are falling apart. A sword catches your eye, its blade less chipped than yours, and you swap it out, hoping its owner doesn't haunt you. Nobody judges. It's just how things work. One guy's sitting with a blank stare, a javelin still in his arm, muttering, "It's mine now." You offer to help. but he waves you off like it's a badge of honor. Wounds are bandaged, some reopening minutes later, and you know infection's coming for half these guys. You're lucky. Your bruises hurt, but nothing's bleeding too bad. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy who made it through, limping back to a camp that's barely better than the battlefield. The fight's over, but the ghosts of it linger in the stories, the smells, and the ache in your bones. You sip your ale, the fire's warmth a small mercy, and whisper, never again. But you know there's another skirmish next week, and you'll be there, because that's the deal. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this muddy hell. But for now, you're here, surrounded by liars and looters, rewriting history one tall tale at a time. You're still nursing that jug of ale, the campfire's glow fading as the tales of battlefield bravado wind down. The camp's stench, wet wool, blood, and that cursed latrine lingers, but you're somewhere else now, far from the muddy chaos of medieval Europe. You're in ancient China, standing on a windswept plain, your hands raw from hauling stones under a sky that's too big for comfort. The year's somewhere around 475 BCE, deep in the Warring States period, and you're not a soldier anymore. You're a laborer, one of thousands toiling to build a wall against the wild. This isn't the great wall you see in postcards, not yet. It's a patchwork of fragile barriers thrown up by rival kingdoms to keep out nomads and each other. The air smells of dust and sweat, and the work's brutal, a grind that makes that medieval march feel like a stroll. Your back aches from piling rammed earth, layer after layer, stomped down with your feet until your legs scream. The wall's nothing fancy, dirt, stones, some timber if you're lucky, but it's your job to make it stand, a line in the sand against the Xiongnu, those ghost-like horsemen who raid and vanish before anyone can blink. You're not here by choice. You're a peasant, maybe a prisoner, conscripted with a shovel and a death sentence if you slack off. The ground's hard, baked by the sun or frozen by night, and your hands are cracked, bleeding from hauling rocks that feel heavier than your hopes. Around you, men grunt and curse, their faces caked in dust, each one a stranger bound by the same misery. Mainstream fact. During the Warring States period, 475-221 BCE, rival Chinese kingdoms built early walls to defend against each other and nomadic tribes like the Xiongnu, using rammed earth techniques that laid the foundation for the later Great Wall. Quirky tidbit, some laborers scratched poems into the earth they packed, lamenting their fate, though most were erased by time or overseers' whips. Historians still argue whether these early walls were more about military defense or a show of power to intimidate neighboring states. The wall's not much to look at, crude, uneven, crumbling in spots where the weather's already winning. It stretches for miles, a jagged scar across the landscape, but it's fragile, like a promise you know won't hold. You pound the earth with a log, your arms burning, while an overseer barks orders, his whip cracking for emphasis. You don't look up. Eye contact's a quick way to get extra work or worse. The guy next to you's muttering about how he'd rather face the Xiongnu than another day of this. You don't reply. You're too busy trying not to collapse. The air's thick with dust, clogging your lungs, and you're thirsty, your throat raw from shouting for water that's always late. You're not alone in this hell. Thousands toil alongside you, a sea of bent backs and blistered hands. Some are peasants like you, yanked from their fields. Others are prisoners, their crimes as vague as the horizon. A few are scholars who mouthed off to the wrong warlord, now learning the hard way that words don't stop arrows. Nobody talks much, but the grunts and groans are a language of their own, a shared song of survival. You pause to wipe sweat from your eyes, and the overseer's whip cracks nearby, not at you, but close enough to make you flinch. You keep moving, piling dirt, hauling stones, each one a small act of defiance against the exhaustion threatening to pull you under. The Xiongnu are the reason you're here. Those nomads who move like shadows, stealing livestock, burning villages, and cutting trade routes like a knife through silk. They're not just a nuisance. They're an existential threat. A reminder that the world beyond your fields is wild and hungry. You've never seen them, but you've heard stories. Horsemen who strike at dawn, their arrows falling like the arrows you dodged on that medieval battlefield. The wall's supposed to stop them, but you're not so sure. It's too low in spots, too weak in others, and you're pretty sure a determined goat could knock it over. Still, you work, because stopping means the whip or worse, and you've got enough scars already. The sun's climbing, baking the plain into a furnace, and you're sweating through your ragged tunic. Water's a distant dream, handed out in sips that taste like mud. You're hungry too, your stomach growling for something better than the millet gruel they serve at dusk. The guy next to you collapses, his face gray, and nobody stops. There's always another body to take his place. You try not to think about him or the others who've fallen, their bones mixing with the earth you're packing. The wall's not just a defense, it's a graveyard, each layer a testament to men like you who'll never see home again. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the day without collapsing or catching the whip. The medieval camp was a nightmare. The battlefield was hell, and now you're here, building a wall that might not even work. You pound the earth, your hands bleeding, and wonder if anyone will remember this. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this dusty purgatory. But for now, you're here, hauling stones under a merciless sun, building a line between civilization and chaos, one painful step at a time. You're still hauling stones, the dust of the warring states plain clinging to your skin like a second shadow. The rammed earth wall you're building is a fragile hope against the Xiongnu, but that's ancient history now. Centuries have passed, and you're in a new era. 221 BCE. You're no longer just a laborer. You're part of something colossal, a dream so big it's crushing you. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, has taken those patchwork walls and turned them into a single massive barrier. You're not here by choice, still a conscripted peasant or maybe a prisoner, your hands blistered from piling earth and stone under a sky that offers no mercy. The air's thick with sweat and fear, and the work's relentless. A grind that makes that medieval battlefield seem like a bad day at the office. Your back screaming as you stomp earth into place, layer after layer, each one packed tight between wooden frames. The walls growing, stretching across mountains and plains, a scar on the land that says, "This is ours." It's not just dirt anymore. Some sections have stone blocks hauled by sheer muscle, your shoulders burning with every load. You're part of an army of workers, hundreds of thousands strong, soldiers, peasants, prisoners, even scholars who crossed the wrong official. The overseer's whip cracks, a sharp reminder to keep moving, and you don't look up. Eye contact's a quick way to get buried under the next layer. The guy next to you's muttering about how he'd sell his soul for a sip of clean water. You don't reply. You're too busy trying not to collapse. Mainstream fact. Qin Shi Huang, who unified China in 221 BCE, linked and expanded existing walls into the early Great Wall, a project that involved over 300,000 workers and set the stage for later dynasties' fortifications. Quirky tidbit, some workers believed eating garlic would give them strength to endure the labor, though it mostly just made their breath a weapon against each other. Historians still argue whether Qin's wall was more about defense against nomadic tribes or a symbol of his absolute control over the new empire. The wall's not just a barrier, it's Qin's vision carved into the earth, a way to keep out the Xiongnu and prove he's the boss of everything under the sky. You've heard stories about the emperor, how he burned books, buried scholars alive, and wants to live forever. You're not sure about that last part, but you know this wall's killing plenty. Men drop daily from exhaustion, hunger, or the whip, their bodies left where they fall, mixed into the dirt you're packing. The wall's earned a grim nickname, the longest cemetery on Earth. You try not to think about it, focusing on the rhythm of your work. Lift, carry, stomp, repeat. Your hands are raw, your tunic's in rags, and you're pretty sure you've got a blister that's planning its own rebellion. The Xiongnu are still out there, those horsemen who raid like ghosts, their arrows as deadly as the ones you dodged on that medieval battlefield. The wall's supposed to stop them, but it's a work in progress, gaps and weak spots everywhere. You're not convinced it'll hold, but you keep building, because stopping means death, and you're not ready to join the cemetery yet. The sun's brutal, turning the plain into a furnace, and water's a rare treat, doled out in muddy sips that taste like despair. You're hungry, your stomach growling for something better than the millet gruel they serve at dusk, which is less food and more punishment. Around you, the work never stops. A sea of men moving like ants under the overseer's glare. Some sing to keep their spirits up, their voices cracked and weary, more dirge than anthem. Others pray, muttering to gods or ancestors, hoping for a miracle that's not coming. One guy's muttering about how he once saw a horse kick an overseer and lived to tell, barely. You don't laugh, but it's the kind of story that keeps you going, proof that even the big shots aren't untouchable. You pause to wipe sweat from your eyes, and the whip cracks nearby, not at you, but close enough to make your heart skip. You keep moving, piling earth, hauling stones, each one a small act of survival. The wall's more than defense, it's Chin's way of rewriting the world. You've heard he's building roads, standardizing weights, even forcing everyone to write the same way. It's all part of his plan to make chaos bow, to turn a fractured land into one empire under his fist. You're not sure if you're building a shield or a monument, but you know it's bigger than you'll ever be. The air's thick with dust, clogging your lungs, and you're thirsty, your throat raw from shouting for water that's always late. The guy next to you collapses, his face gray, and nobody stops. There's always another body to take his place. You try not to think about him or the others, their bones becoming part of the wall you're building. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the day without joining the cemetery. The medieval camp was a nightmare, the battlefield was hell, and now you're here, building a wall that's as much a tomb as a defense. You stomp the earth, your hands bleeding, and wonder if anyone will remember this. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this dusty purgatory, but for now, you're here, hauling stones under a merciless sun, building Chin's dream one painful step at a time. You're still pounding earth under the blistering sun, Chin's colossal wall stretching like a scar across the horizon, its weight as much in your bones as in the stones you haul. That was centuries ago, though, and now you're in a new time. Around 206 BCE, under the Han Dynasty's rule. The Qin's gone, crumbled faster than its walls, but the threat from the north never left. You're not a laborer anymore. You're a soldier stationed on the Great Wall, a living network of watchtowers and garrisons that's more than just a barrier. It's a lifeline for an empire. The air smells of dust and pine, the wind carrying whispers of the Xiongnu, those nomads who still raid like ghosts. Your hands grip a spear, not a shovel, but the work's no less grueling, and the cold bites deeper than any overseer's whip. You're posted at a watchtower, high on a rocky ridge, the wall snaking through mountains and plains like a dragon's spine. It's not just rammed earth now, there's brick and stone in places, stronger than Qin's hasty barriers, with signal fires ready to light up the night. Your job's simple but heavy. Watch the horizon, spot any Xiongnu raiders, and keep the Empire safe. The wind's howling, cutting through your tunic, and your boots are worn thin from patrolling the wall's uneven paths. You're not alone. Thousands of soldiers are scattered along this frontier, living in garrisons that are half fortress, half village. Families, merchants, even kids run around, their voices mingling with the clank of armor and the creak of supply carts. Mainstream fact, the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, 220 CE, expanded the Great Wall into a strategic network, adding watchtowers and garrisons, as seen in records of Emperor Wu's campaigns, which pushed back the Xiongnu and secured trade routes. Quirky tidbit, some watchtower guards kept pet falcons, believing they'd spot raiders faster than human eyes, though the birds mostly just ate their rations. Historians still argue whether the Han Wall's success was due more to its military strength or its role as a trade and cultural hub. Your day starts with patrols trudging along the wall's crest, your spear heavy on your shoulder. The terrain's brutal, steep climbs, loose rocks, and stretches where the walls half crumbled from rain or neglect. You check for cracks in the stone, hauling dirt to patch weak spots, your hands raw from the cold. The Xiongnu are always out there, their horsemen moving like shadows, and you've heard stories of raids that leave villages burning and garrisons slaughtered. You've never seen them, but the fear's real, settling in your gut like that gray stew from the medieval camp. You scan the horizon, eyes straining for dust clouds or the glint of steel, knowing one missed signal could mean disaster. The watchtower's your home, a cramped stone box with a fire pit and a straw mat that's more splinters than comfort. You share it with a few others, gruff men who trade stories to pass the time. One guy swears he once wrestled a wolf and won, barely. You don't laugh, but it's the kind of tale that keeps you going, like those battlefield boasts back in that muddy camp. At night, you take turns tending the signal fire, stacking wood to send up smoke by day or flames by dark if raiders come. The silence is eerie, broken only by the wind or the occasional howl of something that's probably not a wolf, but doesn't sound friendly. You're tired, your eyes burning from staring at nothing, but sleep's a luxury you rarely get. Life on the wall's harsh, but it's not all bleak. The garrison nearby is a small world, with families growing vegetables in patchy plots, and merchants selling wine or cloth for gossip. You've seen Han traders barter with nomads, swapping silk for horses, their voices loud but wary. It's strange guarding against the Xiongnu while their cousins trade at your gate, but that's the wall, part shield, part bridge. You're hungry, living on millet, beans, and salted meat that's more salt than meat. Water's clean, at least, unlike that medieval swill, but it's scarce when raids cut supply lines. You're cold too, your tunic no match for the wind, and you're pretty sure your toes haven't felt warm since you got here. The wall's more than a defense, it's a network, a military road where troops move fast, supplies roll in, and messages fly by beacon or runner. You've seen signal fires light up the night, a chain of flames stretching hundreds of miles, faster than any horse. It's awe-inspiring, like Chin's dream made real, but you're too busy shivering to care. The guy next to you's muttering about how he'd trade his spear for a warm blanket. You don't reply. You're too focused on the horizon, your eyes watering from the wind. A raid could come any moment, and you're not sure if you're ready. Your spear's old, your armor's patched, and you're half convinced the Xiongnu could ride through the wall like it's paper. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a guy trying to make it through the watch without freezing or missing a signal. The medieval camp was a nightmare. Chin's wall was a graveyard. And now you're here, guarding a frontier that's as much myth as stone. You grip your spear, your hands numb, and wonder if anyone back home knows what you're doing. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this windswept post. But for now, you're here, eyes on the horizon, guarding the Empire one cold, lonely watch at a time. You're still shivering on that Han Dynasty watchtower, the great wall's stone biting into your back as the wind howls tales of Xiongnu raiders. But that's ancient history now, and you're somewhere else entirely. America, 1860, a land sprawling and wild, stitched together by ambition and dust. You're not a soldier anymore. You're a rider for the Pony Express, a reckless, breakneck mail service racing across nearly 2,000 miles of frontier. Your hands grip the reins of a Mustang, your heart pounding as you gallop through plains and deserts, a leather mochila stuffed with letters slung over your saddle. The air smells of sagebrush and horse sweat, and the ground blurs beneath you, a relentless challenge that makes Chin's wall seem like a quiet day's work. This isn't some Silk Routes trade caravan, it's a mad dash to prove America can outrun its own size. You're young, barely 18, skinny as a fence post to keep your horse light. The Express likes them lean, under 125 pounds, and you're one of dozens, maybe an orphan, because, let's be honest, Nobody's crying too hard if you don't come back. Your job's simple but insane. Ride 75 or 100 miles at a clip, swapping horses every 10-15 miles, dodging bandits, blizzards, and arrows from tribes defending their land. You're carrying urgent mail, Lincoln's inaugural address, banknotes, maybe a love letter worth its weight in gold. The West's booming, gold fever's got California buzzing, but news takes weeks by stagecoach. You're here to shrink that to 10 days, a feat so bold it's practically a middle finger to geography. Mainstream fact. The Pony Express, launched in April 1860, covered 1,966 miles from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California, delivering mail in about 10 days, a record-breaking feat that captured America's imagination. Quirky tidbit: some riders carried a small Bible or a lucky coin, believing it'd protect them from ambushes, though it mostly just added weight to their saddlebags. Historians still argue whether the Express was more a practical mail service or a publicity stunt to secure government contracts. You're galloping now, your horse's hooves drumming a rhythm that's half thrill, half terror. The sun's high, baking the plains into a shimmering haze, and your throat's dry, dust clogging your lungs. You've got a revolver at your hip, a knife in your boot, but you're no gunslinger, just a kid with a job and a lot of nerve. The mochila's heavy, its leather slapping against your thigh, but you don't dare slow down. Stations are your lifeline. Rough shacks every 10-15 miles where you swap horses in under 2 minutes. You pull into one now, your mount lathered in sweat, and fling the mochila onto a fresh horse, gulping water that tastes like dirt. The station keeper, a grizzled guy with a rifle, nods but doesn't talk. There's no time for chit-chat. The trail's a beast, all rocks, ruts, and rivers that don't care about your schedule. You've crossed frozen streams, your boots icing over, and dodged sandstorms that sting like a swarm of bees. Bandits are out there, eyeing your cargo, and you've heard stories of riders ambushed, their mochilas looted before they hit the ground. Native tribes, too, aren't thrilled about you tearing through their land, and you've seen arrowheads glint in the dusk more than once. You're not fighting a war, but every ride feels like one, a solo sprint against everything the frontier can throw at you. The guy at the last station swore he once outran a pack of wolves. Barely. You don't laugh. It's the kind of story that keeps you sharp, like those tall tales around the medieval campfire. You're hungry, living on jerky and hardtack that's more brick than food. Water's scarce in the desert stretches, and you're rationing sips, your lips cracked and bleeding. Your horse is your only friend, a tough little Mustang that doesn't quit, but you know it's suffering too. You pat its neck, muttering thanks, because if it goes down, you're done. The air's thick with dust, your eyes watering, and you're tired, your body a map of bruises from the saddle. You're not sure how many miles you've got left, 30, 50, but you keep riding, because stopping's not an option, and the mail's gotta get through. The Express is a gamble, bankrolled by businessmen who sank a fortune into stations, horses, and you. They're bleeding money, hoping for a government contract that's looking shakier every day. You don't care about the politics. You're just here for the ride, the pay, and maybe a shot at being a legend. Towns cheer when you blaze through, kids waving like you're a hero, but you don't stop to wave back. You're too busy scanning for trouble, your heart racing with every shadow. The trail's lonely, just you, your horse, and the wind, a howl that's eerily like those Xiongnu whispers on the wall. You're not sure if you're brave or just crazy, but either way, you're flying. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a kid trying to make it to the next station without losing your scalp or your cargo. The medieval camp was a nightmare, Chin's wall was a tomb, and now you're here, racing a continent with nothing but grit and a good horse. You spur your Mustang, the mochila slapping, and wonder if anyone will remember this. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this wild ride. But for now, you're here, galloping through the dust, carrying America's dreams one breakneck mile at a time. You're still galloping across the frontier, the Pony Express mochila slapping against your thigh, dust clogging your lungs as your Mustang's hooves pound the earth. The plains stretch endless around you, a wild blur of sagebrush and danger. But you're not alone on this ride. The trail's alive with a network of grit and guts that keeps the mail moving. You're not just a rider now. You're part of a system, a chain of relay stations and tough-as-nails keepers who make this mad dash possible. The air smells of horse sweat and dry grass, and the sun's a hammer, beating down on your cracked lips and aching back. Your revolver's heavy at your hip, your knife's tucked in your boot, and you're scanning for trouble. Bandits, arrows, or just a rattlesnake with bad timing. This isn't some Silk Routes caravan plodding along, it's a high-stakes sprint, and you're one wrong move from losing everything. You pull into a relay station, a ramshackle hut baking in the desert, your horse lathered and snorting. You've got seconds, not minutes, to swap mounts. You fling the mochila onto a fresh Mustang, its saddle creaking, and gulp water that tastes like it was scooped from a puddle. The station keeper, a grizzled guy with a squint and a rifle, shoves the reins into your hands without a word. You're off again, the new horse surging beneath you, its hooves kicking up dust that stings your eyes. These stations are your lifeline, scattered every 10-15 miles, each one a tiny island in a sea of wilderness. They're bare bones, corral, shack, maybe a fire pit, but without them, you'd be stranded, the mail lost to the wind. Mainstream fact. The Pony Express relied on about 157 relay stations, spaced 10 to 15 miles apart, allowing riders to swap horses in under 2 minutes, a logistical feat that ensured mail delivery in roughly 10 days from Missouri to California in 1860 or 61. Quirky tidbit, some station keepers kept a pet dog to warn of approaching riders or raiders, though the dogs often chased the horses instead, causing chaos. Historians still argue whether the Express's efficiency came more from its tight organization or the sheer determination of its riders and keepers. You're back on the trail, the horizon, a shimmering tease of the next station. Your body's a map of bruises, the saddle rubbing you raw, and your hands ache from gripping the reins. The mochila's your mission, its leather pouch stuffed with letters that could change lives, bank drafts, government orders, or maybe a soldier's note to his sweetheart. You don't peek, you just ride, because every second counts. The trail's a beast, all rocks, ruts, and rivers that don't care about your deadline. You've forded streams, the icy water soaking your boots, and dodged sandstorms that feel like God's got a personal grudge. Bandits are out there, eyeing your cargo, and you've seen arrowheads glint in the dusk. A reminder that tribes like the Paiute aren't thrilled about you tearing through their land. Stations come and go, a blur of dust and sweat. Relay stops are quick, horse, water, go, but home stations, every 75-100 miles, are where you crash. You pull into one now, your legs wobbling as you slide off the saddle. The mochila handed to another rider who's already gone before you hit the ground. The home station's a sod hut, barely standing, with a fireplace and a mat that's more dirt than straw. The keeper's wife hands you a bowl of beans and hardtack, and you eat like it's a feast, your stomach too tired to complain. You're supposed to rest, but sleep's a rumor. Your body's wired, your mind replaying every near miss on the trail. The keeper's muttering about a rider who outran a cougar last week. Barely. You don't laugh. It's the kind of story that keeps you sharp, like those hand watchtower tales of wolf fights. Life at these stations is raw, a fight against the frontier itself. Keepers live with a rifle in reach, fending off raids, wolves, or just the boredom of endless dust. Supplies are scarce. Flour, ammo, hope. And winters turn shacks into ice boxes. You've seen keepers patch corrals with scavenged wood, their hands as calloused as yours, and you know they're as vital as you are. A missed horse, a closed gate, and the whole system grinds to a halt. You're grateful for them, but you don't say it. Words are cheap out here. You're hungry, living on jerky and beans that taste like regret, and water's a luxury when rivers run dry. Your horse is your real partner, a tough Mustang that doesn't quit, and you pat its neck muttering thanks, because if it falters, you're walking. The Express is a machine, but it's bleeding money. Businessmen like Russell, Majors, and Waddell sank a fortune into this, banking on a government contract that's looking like a pipe dream. You don't care about their ledgers, you're here for the ride, $25 a month, and maybe a shot at being a legend. Towns cheer when you blaze through, kids waving like you're a hero, but you don't wave back. You're too busy scanning for trouble, your heart racing with every shadow. The trail's lonely, just you, your horse, and the wind. A howl that's not so different from that medieval battlefield screams. You're not sure if you're brave or just reckless, but you keep riding because the mail's gotta get through. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a kid trying to make it to the next station without losing your scalp or your cargo. The medieval camp was a nightmare. Chin's wall was a tomb. And now you're here, racing a continent with nothing but grit and a good horse. You spur your Mustang, the mochila slapping, and wonder if anyone will remember this wild ride. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this dusty sprint. But for now, you're here, galloping through the frontier, carrying America's dreams one breakneck mile at a time. You're still racing across the frontier, the Pony Express mochila thumping against your saddle, the dust of the trail settling into your bones like it did on Chin's wall. But that's a fading echo now, and you're somewhere else entirely, centuries earlier on the windswept grasslands of Central Asia. You're not a rider anymore, you're a nomad, your hands gripping a crude bow strung with horsehair, coaxing low, soulful notes from a wooden instrument that's more heart than craft. The air smells of leather and steppe grass, and the sky's vast, a canvas for stories told in music. This is the violin's birthplace, not the polished concert halls you're picturing, but a raw, wandering world where strings sing like the human voice. It's not some Aztec garden serenade. It's a sound born of survival, longing, and the open road, a thread that'll weave through centuries to become something timeless. You're sitting by a fire, the night cold and sharp, your fingers stiff as you draw the bow across the strings of a morincourt, its nasal hum mimicking the wind, or maybe the cry of a horse you lost to winter. You're no virtuoso, just a herder telling tales through music, your notes carrying the weight of a life spent, moving, always moving. Around you, your kin listen, their faces lit by flickering flames, sharing stories of raids, hunts, or a trader who passed through with silken lies. The instrument's simple, wood, horsehair, a few strings, but it's alive, its voice raw and human, a bridge between you and the vast, lonely steppe. You play to keep the dark at bay, to remember who you are when the world feels too big. Mainstream fact: the violin's ancestors, like the morincourt and rebab, emerged in Central Asia around the 8th century, spreading along the Silk Road to influence bowed instruments in Persia, the Arab world, and eventually Europe. Quirky tidbit: some nomads believed their instruments held spirits, and they'd feed them with drops of mare's milk, hoping for sweeter tones, though it mostly just gummed up the strings. Historians still argue whether these early bowed instruments evolved independently or were sparked by a single cultural exchange along trade routes. You're not alone in this music. The Silk Road's a highway of sound, carrying your instrument west through dusty markets and mountain passes. In Persia, it becomes the rebab, its voice deeper, played by poets in candlelit courts. In Moorish Spain, it's the rebel, strummed in taverns where traders swap spices and secrets. You follow the trail, your hands now shaping a Byzantine lyra, its curved body tucked under your chin, as you play for a crowd in a stone-walled city. Each culture adds something: a new string, a sharper bridge, a tuning that sings of home. Your music's not written down, it's passed mouth to ear, a living thing that shifts with every player. You're no master, just a link in a chain, your notes a whisper of the step in every chord. The years blur, and you're in medieval Europe, a minstrel now, your fiddle a boxy thing with a raw, intimate sound. You play in a smoky hall, your boots tapping on straw-covered floors, the crowd swaying to your melody. It's no concert hall, it's a tavern, loud with laughter and spilled ale. But your fiddle cuts through, its voice a cry that could break hearts or start fights. The instrument's crude, no standard shape, just whatever the local woodcarver hacked together. You've got 5 strings, maybe 4, and tuning's a guess, but it works. You play for dances, weddings, or just to keep the cold out, your note's a flicker of that nomad's fire you left behind centuries ago. You're hungry, living on bread and broth that'd make that Pony Express hardtack seem gourmet. Your tunic's patched, your hands calloused from the bow, and you're tired, trudging from village to village with your fiddle slung over your back. The road's dangerous, bandits, wolves, or just a lord who doesn't like your face, but you keep playing because music's your coin, your shield, your soul. You've heard tales of fancier instruments in Italy where craftsmen carve wood like it's art, but that's a world away. For now, you're here, coaxing life from strings that hum like the steppe wind, your music a thread connecting you to those nomads who started it all. The Renaissance dawns, and you're in Cremona, a town humming with craft and ambition. You're not playing now, you're watching Andrea Amati, a master luthier, shape a violin that's no crude fiddle. His hands move like a poet's, carving spruce and maple into curves that sing before a string's even strung. You're awed by the F-holes, the arch top, the tuning in perfect fifths that makes the instrument soar like a voice. You're not a craftsman, just a witness, but you feel the shift. This is the violin's soul taking form, a leap from your nomad's bow to something eternal. The air smells of varnish and sawdust, and you're half convinced Amati's working magic, each stroke of his chisel a spell. You're not a hero, not even close. You're just a wanderer carrying a song through time, from steppe fires to Cremona's workshops. The medieval camp was a nightmare, Chin's wall was a tomb, the Pony Express was a wild ride, and now you're here, tracing the violin's roots through centuries of dust and dreams. You hum a tune, your fingers itching for strings, and wonder if anyone will remember this music. The fan's hum in your room is a faint comfort, a reminder that you're not actually stuck in this ancient song, but for now, you're here, listening to the violin's first cries, a sound that'll echo across the world one note at a time. The fire's dying now, its embers glowing soft as your eyes grow heavy. The violin's hum lingers, a whisper from those nomads, minstrels, and craftsmen who poured their souls into strings. You're not on the steppe anymore, not racing across plains or guarding walls. You're here, safe in the quiet of your room, the fans hum a gentle lullaby. The world's vast, full of battles, walls, and wild rides. But tonight, it's just you and this story, fading like a final note. Let the dust settle, the mud dry, the strings fall silent. You've traveled far through chaos and song, and now it's time to rest. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and let the echoes carry you to sleep. Sweet dreams. Thanks for riding through this wild journey with me. Rest easy now and let those echoes of mud, walls, hooves, and strings fade into some sweet dreams.